everyone, and welcome to Fright, your source for short horror reviews. Oh, the three major joys of childhood. I'm speaking, of course, of cartoons, games, and that one love that never fades even into adulthood, pizza. And if you were a child of the 90s like me, then you know that there is no place on earth that combined those three specific elements quite like the holy kid mecca of showbiz pizza, aka Chuck E. Cheese. Looking back, I can remember the sheer, unadulterated joygasm knowing we were having dinner there would bring. When you heard you were headed to Chuck E. Cheese, you knew you were in for an evening of arcade games, ball pits, pizza, and hell, even an animatronic band. And birthdays there were even better. All you had to do was mention that you were having a party there, and you'd have kids you barely even talked to show up to give you crap and hog down some pizza. Shit, it was practically the next best thing to 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 Disney World. I mean, as a kid, you didn't even notice how fantastically creepy the place was. No, I'm not talking about the ball pits swimming in E. coli or the FDA grade Z pizza. Seriously guys, I might not have noticed it as an overstimulated kitty larva, but that shit was gross. No, I'm talking about the glassy, dead-eyed stare of the animatronic characters. I remember one trip where the curtains that would normally conceal the animatronics were apparently out for cleaning, and I got to enjoy my meal with a half-dozen mascot suits full of gears and cogs, trying to burn a hole in my 8-year-old soul with their lifeless, staring eyes. I assure you, the night terrors were the perfect complement to the intestinal distress that their pizza wreaked upon me. In fact, the only thing worse than that combination that springs to mind is what it would be like to be locked up overnight with those damn things. And that brings us to the subject of today's review, Five Nights at Freddy's. Somehow, this little indie hit didn't show up on my radar until a few months ago, and after I downloaded the mobile device version, I figured it was high time that I discussed what was arguably the biggest underground success story of 2014. Five Nights at Freddy's can best be described as a point-and-click adventure game from hell. In it, you play a night watchman and presumable maker of poor life choices who is charged with keeping an eye on a Chuck E. Cheese-style pizza restaurant named Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Freddy's is very much like its competitors in that it has pizza, games, and animatronics, but unlike the others, its animatronics are advanced enough that they're capable of roaming freely about the pizza joint, interacting with and entertaining the customers on a one-to-one basis. Because buying billions of dollars in military-grade hardware, equipping it with advanced AI and facial recognition technology is clearly a better idea for a children's pizzeria than stuffing a teenager named Corey into a mascot suit. Having come up with the absolute worst way imaginable of cutting down on employee turnover, Freddy's has fallen on hard times after their plan of releasing James Cameron's fevered nightmares on an audience of unsuspecting children goes inexplicably awry. After a bunch of children wind up missing, and after an event finally referred to as the Bite of 87, where the facial recognition tech apparently recognized someone's skull as an everlasting gobstopper, Freddy and friends are no longer allowed to roam around during the day. Instead, they're only allowed to wander about at night to prevent their servos from seizing up. Unfortunately, their programming hasn't been altered to accommodate the presence of a night watchman, and should you be spotted, they will assume you are a malfunctioning endoskeleton and do their damnedest to jam you into a spare costume, which, not being made to accommodate a squishy human being, will result in you becoming the tomato paste for tomorrow's pizza. Shit, these things are clearly smarter than the people that bought them. Even they realize it would have been smarter to stuff a human being into one of these suits. The game itself consists of you trying to avoid being put into the aforementioned teenager named Corey's position by using the building's security cameras, hallway lights, and security doors to keep Freddy and friends out. All while they provide jump scare after jump scare after jump scare in an attempt to do to your underpants with fear what the cooks tried to do with grease and bad pepperoni. Be aware that there's a limited power supply for those safeguards though, because Freddy's apparently has better things to spend their power bill on, because of fucking course they did! Anyway, while one could reasonably assume that the limited point-and-click gameplay and over-reliance on jump scares would hamstring this game, it turns out that those two things are actually the strongest points in this game's favor. Saying that the gameplay mechanics are simple doesn't mean that they're not challenging and engrossing, and balancing your need to see what's going on and defend yourself with the necessity of conserving power creates a tense atmosphere that has you strained to hear every creepy clatter, chuckle, and padded footstep echoing through the benighted pizzeria. And it's exactly this level of tension that makes the jump scares work. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Jump scares are the fart jokes of the horror world. They might be good for getting a quick rise out of the audience, but if that's all you bring to the table, then you're quickly going to leave your audience bored, annoyed, and disgusted in equal measure. That said, with the proper setup, a good one can knock things out of the park. Fortunately, the latter is the case with Five Nights at Freddy's, as the thick atmosphere created by those simple mechanics I mentioned is the perfect setup for a good jump scare. By the time it hits, you're usually so on edge that the pants-ruining burst of terror comes as a welcome relief. Also, kudos to them for giving you some brief, half-second oh shit moments before you get your face torn off. Also, while the story is probably as nonsensical as you can get, that doesn't make it any less fascinating, as it's revealed through audio logs and the occasional background hint. It all operates on a bizarre form of nightmare logic that fits the unusual concept perfectly. All in all, Five Nights at Freddy's is a pleasant little surprise, and if you've got a few extra bucks, I'd suggest checking it out. Anyway, that's all we have time for today. I'll see you next time on... I'm Leslie Rice, the host of Terror Obscura, the show where we look at the best and worst horror has to offer. For those of you who are already familiar with the show, thanks for taking the time to visit my Patreon page. Your love, support, and disturbingly candid nude photographs are what keeps this show going. Seriously, Jerry, you can stop now. But for those of you who aren't, feel free to take a look at one of the episodes linked below. Just a heads up though, they aren't safe for work, so if you do happen to be on the job, get back to those TPS reports or just watch the following. Put simply, Terror Obscura is a comedy review web series that focuses on some of the coolest and crappiest fright flicks in existence. New or old, good or bad, high budget or low, whatever the case, Terror Obscura is here to tell you how this particular cinematic specimen came to be, give it a good verbal slapping around, and then tell you whether it's worth digging up, whether it should be left in a shallow grave, or whether it needs to be killed with fire. From the psychotic and badly filmed ramblings of a basement-dwelling manchild to a somewhat more proficiently shot show picked up by several respectable websites, including Channel Awesome, Terror Obscura has risen from obscurity with the help of a dedicated fan base. And that, boys and girls, is where you come in. Terror Obscura is a labor of love for me. I've wanted to make this show a bigger part of my life for a long time, but I need your help to do it. Long story short, making a half-hour-long episode of Terror Obscura takes time and effort, and while I may have only a nodding acquaintance with reality, I'm still subject to its laws. Truth is, I only make about $20 a month off ad revenue, and, bountiful though that sum may be, in order to keep a roof over my head, I actually have to work around 55 hours a week. And as you can guess, that eats into my video creation time something fierce. Enter Patreon. Essentially, Patreon is a sort of ongoing Kickstarter where fans of a show can become patrons of their favorite creators. For a monthly amount of your choice, you're basically supporting the show by allowing me to spend more time working on it rather than trying to ensure that the next episode isn't published from my new address inside an abandoned cardboard box. Wow, Fear Fan, I imagine you saying, that sounds like a great idea, but what's in it for me? Well, apart from the warm, fuzzy feeling you get from donating, which is definitely pride and not at all the drugs that I slipped you in order to make you susceptible to hypnotic suggestion.
Donate. Donate. You want to donate. Donate to me. Donate everything. Give me everything. Donate.
On top of getting more frequent content, individual patrons will get special privileges, like early access to episodes, a monthly newsletter keeping you up to date on my current and future projects, and being immortalized with a special thanks credit in every future episode. And what does that cost, you ask? An arm? A leg? My firstborn? Well, that's the kind of psychotic devotion I like to see from my fans. Luckily, you can have all of that for just $10 a month. And there's even more at the higher donation levels. As for all of those babies and severed limbs, just slip them through the slot after 6 p.m. And for those looking to be a little more altruistic, not only will you be getting rewards for yourself, but every donation you make moves us closer to our milestone goals, which include neat stuff for everyone, like episode commentaries, new equipment to improve the quality of the show, and even some entirely new shows I've wanted to do for a long time. Like I said, folks, this is entirely voluntary. I've always wanted Terror Obscura to be free entertainment, to the point where I've even chosen to forego the mid-roll ads that could potentially double my revenue. But For those of you who are willing to lend me more than just the brain cells that my show kills, please check out my Patreon page. If there isn't a link below, you can contact me on my Facebook or Twitter page, or you can even email me. Anyway, thanks for taking the time to watch. Now, on with the show.